It was week 3 in the weekly NFL Bonanzas. The best primetime entertainment since Seinfeld and George Costanza's. And forget this weekend's Emmys, but I will mention Breaking Bad, because some of your teams must have been on meth to put up scores that bad. 4 guys scored under 80, which is kind of unforgivable. And with these new weekly roundups, all these moments are relivable. You're probably all saying, let's go, or the Spanish version, vamos. So here's the weekly rundown from the Banda de Hermanos. It may mean band of brothers, but it was more like sibling rivalry when Caleb came to town and thought that he could rival me. Both of us entered with our records 2-0. We knew one perfect streak was soon to go, and while I had respect for crows before hoes, I'm out to murder all of you bros. The best 2 QBs in fantasy, but Rodgers had a stinker. His team scored 30 points, but he threw 1 TD and 2 interceptions, and on reflection, coupled with Arian Foster, when your best 2 players bomb, you're facing up to a loss to an opponent whose tight end score was more than the combined of your defense, kicker and both running backs. Jordan Cameron played out of his mind. He scored a massive 27, the new look Browns in 7th heaven, and even though the Vikings lost, Peterson's 18's a decent score. Welker played Monday night and he added 18 more. Throw in the fact that my kicker got more than Rodgers, and it made for a situation where Caleb had to face up to some utter domination. The margin of victory, 51 points, the only perfect record left in this joint. Caleb's now sitting at 2-1, and so is Ken, whose cunning linguist won against the formerly perfect, now beaten Colton. Ghostface Killers loaded their 36 chambers, but they must have misfired because it's hard to explain the team who had won both games before, only scoring 74. Ken only got 88, so this game was hardly a point fest. I tried to explain how they both scored so low, but that would be kind of pointless. But there are a few things that I'll say. Every receiver that both of them played scored less than 10, it just wasn't their day. Matt Stafford was big, and the Cowboys' defensive scheme meant they scored more points than any of Colton's team. And another thing I should probably mention is that most of their top scorers this week got a benching. Ken had 83 points between the 5 who didn't start. That would have beaten the 9 that Colton chose to take part. But both guys have still won more than they've lost, which can't be said for last season's boss. Tim scored big, but still wasn't a winner, because Mookamish Travis scored even bigger. Cam gave Tim a great start as he went off big on the Giants, but Travis refused to be bettered. His comeback was defiant. Bell and Decker both scored over 20, and Graham was insane. Every week he scores plenty. There were many solid scores from La Bala de Plata, but you'd be crackers to think that would even matter, not when Trav scores close to 150, and that's with Rice on the bench. He was pretty nifty. It's early days, Tim's got time to recover, but his running back core played ball worse than my mother. Maybe he'll be able to work out a trade for a running back from the Dallas Raiders. They've got about 6, but it's doing the trick, at least this week it did, because Charles was just sick. Bernard scored big too, then Breeze put on a show. Jeff had no answer and nowhere to go. While DeMarco scored big, as did Megatron, the Bengals defense meant that Zach was long gone. There was just no reaching him in this match. There was more chance of Hakeem Nicks making a catch. Yeah, that didn't happen either. Zach got his first win, gave himself a breather. In fact, so did both other teams who were yet to win. Ryan really needed it because 2 games in, his scores were nothing short of disaster, causing the rest of us fits of laughter. But this week he stepped up to redress the balance and show that he does have some fantasy talents. To be fair to Andrew, both his running backs were out, but he doesn't have that much reason to shout because Bilal Powell stepped up and was decent. It was Eli who played his worst game of the season. Ryan got 6 times as much just from his defense. Wilson was big and his kicker went off-ski. Goskowski won the battle against Janikowski. That's the correct pronunciation in the Polish dialect. And speaking of Polish, Phil's chances aren't dying yet. Josh got a decent victory last week, but this week his hopes ended up on the trash heap. Against Blomo, he got pwned, yo, even though Dwayne Bowe was a no-show. CJ Spiller scored so low that he must have been running in slow-mo. Phil got big scores from Romo and Shady. For Josh, Colin Cat was whack. He barely displayed the skills of an NFL fantasy starter. Givens too, these guys got to try harder. But it was still unsure how this match would go down until Antonio Brown rolled into town. 36 points, that score was ridiculous. Another 14 from his kicker whose skills are meticulous, and Phil had ended his barren run of scoring less than a celibate nun. So as this lowdown closes, a glance at the leagues shows we're all pretty close. All teams have their prestige and their pride up to now. Nobody's left winless. Next week's matchups see Caleb face Dingus. Ken plays Phil in a real grudge match. Zach takes on Andrew in a difficult to judge match. Travis takes on Ryan in what looks like a mismatch. Jeff's facing Josh in a who's watching this match. And last up, Colton's ready to meet the only team who's yet to be beat. And who's the guy who's achieved that feat of no losses and wins reading 3? An achievement he's notched up so easily? Is it any of you? Oh, that's right, it's me.
Peace.